Welcome back to Andersen Acres, and we're inside today with a little surprise, a bunny surprise, which if you have been watching our weekly updates, you're probably not surprised, but a couple of days ago, Gemini, my Holland Lop, produced two tiny little babies. Okay, so we have two little tiny broken black, which are our first broken blacks of the year, but broken black Holland Lops. So the purpose of today's video is not actually to show you them. Even though I like showing my little guys off, they are perfect. She only had two. She didn't have any others. None passed away. There were just two in the litter. But what I wanted to talk about is what's called, people call it a lot of different things, splitting the litter or splitting the clutch or a split clutch. It goes by a lot of different names, but basically what can happen, and this is something you need to watch out for, it's a bad thing. So what can happen is your litter, these little babies, can end up split. Okay, these little guys can end up split. So there's only two of them, but even if you had more, it's not a good thing. So if you notice, you go to your nest box and you notice there's a whole bunch of fur in this corner, and there's a whole bunch of fur in this corner, and there's a bunch of fur in that corner. You need to check all those piles, because what can sometimes happen is some babies work their way over here, some babies work their way over here, and some babies stay over here. You need to check all these piles for little babies, because you don't want your clutch, your litter split. If a litter splits up, what can happen is the litter that's hanging out over here, maybe there's only one in there. Maybe that one will freeze. Okay, so if he's by himself and he doesn't have quite enough fur, because these guys have most of the fur, then he could freeze, and you don't want him to freeze. So check to make sure your clutch is all together. Check at least twice a day. So actually get in there, move the fur, make sure you do a head count. Make sure you check the folds of your blankets and stuff. Make sure there's nobody missing. Now, I know there's only two in here because I've checked. But check every single day. Do a head count. Go, okay, I've got two here. I'm okay. And if you see a chunk of fur starting in another corner, it might be because the babies have moved over to that corner. So, one, you don't want the separated babies to freeze. If you keep them all together, they're more likely to stay warm. But there's another issue, because someone is going to pop up and go, hey, it doesn't really matter if my clutch splits up like that because it's nice and warm in my house. They're not going to freeze anyway. That's great. We're in the house right now too. But there is another problem with splitting your clutch. So if they split, now you don't split them on purpose. They split themselves. But if they split up, what might happen is if there's a group over here, maybe there's one or two over here and I've got the other five over here. What can happen then, even if they're warm, is maybe Gemini comes in and she only feeds this bigger group. Okay, maybe she only feeds these guys and she doesn't feed these guys. If she doesn't feed these guys, they're going to die. They need to eat. So if your clutch is being split and mama's only feeding one, you have to move them back together. Okay, move your clutch back together so everybody gets fed. If it's happening frequently, so you notice the same 2 or 3 kits end up over in that corner covered in fur and they're not getting fed, you're going to have to formula feed those babies. Okay, so double check. You don't want your clutch splitting. You want to make sure that your clutch is all together and that mama is looking after everybody. Because if your litter is split, broken up into different areas of the next nest box, they run the risk of getting cold, and they run the risk of mama not looking after everyone because she simply doesn't know where everyone is. So double check that your clutch is together. Do that twice a day. Make sure your babies are accounted for. And one more look at our beautiful little babies. And yes, these guys are Vienna marked. You can tell because their ears, which should be colored because they're broken black, are white, which means they carry a good chance of having blue eyes, which is what we're going for. So hopefully they have blue eyes, and I'm kind of hoping one's a blue-eyed girl. Of course, that puts me in a position of who do I keep and who do I not keep? That's not a bad problem to have. I love having to pick who to keep and who to find wonderful, loving homes for. So that is about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. Double check your litters. Make sure they're not split up. We'll see you tomorrow.